don't want to be in the background. He's like, okay, so I have about anywhere from like 1.5 pounds to 2.5 pounds. I think would be a good size. Obviously, if you only start with like 1.5 pounds, you'll have a smaller base form. But I have about 2 pounds here. I'm going to put a little bit of water on my bat, dry it off just a little bit so I don't have too much. Make sure my clay is nice and rounded, and throw it on my wheel. Then I'm going to turn on my wheel really slowly and hit it. And then another tip that I have, if your clay falls off pretty often, is instead of coning up, I'm making my seal right now, but instead of coning up first, try doming down. And I know it's already in a dome shape, but if you just go pressing on the top and giving some pressure on the side with my left hand, then I'm really able to make sure that my clay is stuck. Add some water, cone up. And if you're still getting that volcano, the volcano can happen if you start with a piece that's too flat and not rounded at the top. So try keeping your clay in that coned up shape. If you smack it on the top really hard before you start centering, you're gonna get that volcano. Doming back down, making sure my elbows are sturdy. I'm doming at a forward motion. I'm gonna get rid of this extra clay. Let's cone up one more time. And then as I dome down, whether you're doing the karate chop or the heel of your hand, we're at an angle. I'm not right on top. We're at an angle and we're pushing down, making sure my elbow is down. We're pushing down and forward. Make sure you let go very slowly. I'm going to start to open, so I'm doing the karate chop on top, using this bone in the side of my hand to make a nice entrance, so I know where to put my fingers. Then I'm going to use my 3 fingers, start to push down and into my clay, trying to keep my hands as steady as possible, going slowly. If I need to stop and add a little puddle of water in there, I can. Once I feel like I'm far enough down or I'm getting close to the bottom, use my needle tool to measure. I feel like I can go a little bit further. And then also notice how the top of my clay right now, that hole is pretty small, right? I'm making sure that I'm going from the top and my wrist is up. If my wrist is down here, then I start to open the top of my clay too, and I don't want to do that yet. We want it to be still kind of closed in. And that's good. Now I'm going to put my fingers back in and I'm going to start to curl towards myself, opening up the bottom of my pot, not the top, right? So the top right here has not gotten any wider. Pulling out. And then I'm going to compress my bottom, just using my finger, going back and forth. This helps with cracks. Once I've got my bottom compressed, then I'm going to take my sponge. I'm going to even out my cylinder. To do that, I'm just going to take my sponge, I'm going to press on the outside, pull out from the inside, and now I'm opening the top of my clay. So that's when the top here should start to open up, is this step. It's kind of like a pre-pull evening out my cylinder, and now I've got a nice shape for me to start pulling. When I start to pull, I've seen a lot of us pulling like this with one hand. Make sure that you're using two hands. One's on the inside, one is on the outside. My middle finger is going to be making that ledge at the bottom. My inside hand is going to be supporting. My elbows are down, and I'm making sure that my nose is directly over my pot. I'm going to make that indent at the bottom right there, just like that. Add some water. My inside finger is a little bit higher than my outside. Making sure that my head is straight. We don't want to be leaning out. If I feel like my clay is getting too dry, my finger starts to tug, I'm just going to stop and go back to where I just was and continue to pull up all the way to the top. Oop. I'm loosening my pressure a little bit at the top. And then I'm going to take my rib tool along the side, just straighten out. My finger did slip towards the top, so I'm just straightening that out. Pushing, if yours is really wavy, pushing out from the inside to help straighten it as well. Add more water, go for my second pull. Now I'm going to do something called compressing my lip. I'm going to take my two fingers, I'm going to place it on the side with my left hand. My right hand, I'm just going to take my finger like this. I'm going to give the lip a slight pinch because it's a little thicker than the rest. And then I'm going to place this finger on top just to make it look a little bit nicer. Now for my third pull, it's going to be a little bit tricky for me to get my hand in there, or all the way to the bottom. So I will have to lift up my arm. If you do have to take your arm off of your leg when you're pulling, instead of having it way out here and having an unsteady elbow, try to keep your arm tucked against your body so that you do have some stability. I'm going to add some more water. Loosening up my pressure towards the top. Compress the lip. Oh, did you hear that? That was my elbow. And then scrape the sides. All right, so from here, I've got a cylinder. Normally we would cut this in half and look at it, but instead we are gonna make a vase. So I think I'll do the concave one first. I'm going to take my sponge, wet my cylinder, and I'm going to do something called collaring first. And collaring requires 6 fingers. So I'm going to use my thumb, my pointer fingers, and my middle fingers on both hands. I need six points, not quite like that. I need 6 points of contact. So what I mean by that is all 6 of these fingers are going to be on my pot at once, and this is going to help keep it on center. Because you can imagine if I try to choke this in and change the shape, it'll be easy to knock it off center. So I'm going to take these 2 fingers and I'm going to put them on the sides of my pot like this, and then I'm going to take my middle fingers, Ellie, and I'm going to be putting them on the back. So my front finger, or my pointer fingers are going to be on the front here, my thumbs are going to be on the back, and my middle fingers are going to be on the back. So I'm kind of holding on to it like this, okay? Then I'm going to start at the bottom, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a simple concave shape that kind of goes in like this, and then I'll show you how to push it out, and then we'll do the convex shape. So I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to start to push in. I feel it starting to get dry, so I'm going to let go slowly, re-wet it, Your fingers should basically be hydroplaning over your surface here. And what I mean by that is there's a nice layer of water in between your fingers and your clay body. So it just glides right over. So as I'm moving to the middle, I started squeezing a little bit harder. And now as I get to the top, I'm gonna loosen my pressure. Just like that. And now you'll notice that my top starts to get a little funky. So what I'm gonna do is, and I've showed a few of you this just as you're making your cylinders, but I'm gonna cut off the top. So with my needle tool, I'm going to support, make sure there's a good amount of slip on my fingers. I'm gonna support on the inside, and I'm going to cut on the outside. I'm holding this at a 45-degree angle. I don't wanna just go directly in to the side. 45-degree angle, it's a little bit softer. And I'm going to push into the side until my needle tool touches my finger, and then I can just lift up. That lift is kind of tricky, so if you get to your finger, you can always just stop and then lift up. But as you get more used to that, you can. Do we need to take that chair down? Will you take that down for me, Anthony? Just so people can see better, thank you. And then I've got a nice, smooth, clean top, but now it kind of looks ugly because I cut it. So I'm going to do that lip compression thing again. So I'm gonna pinch the top a little bit to make it more rounded, and then put my finger on the top. I'm gonna go for one more collar. So I'm starting towards the bottom with my 6 points of contact. I'm squeezing in the middle. You don't want to collar too much at once. You'll probably have to do it multiple times. If you do too much at once, you'll start to see some stress marks on the inside, and they just look like little lines. And then we choked it in even more. And then I could play with the top a little bit. I could pull it out. I could do a little mini pull on the neck. So I could squeeze and try to make it a little bit thinner towards the top and more dramatic. I could collar again if I wanted to and make it even thinner in the middle. Or I could go out and start to push some of this back out and make a different form. So I'm gonna add some water, and I'm gonna see if my hand will fit in here. Obviously my elbow is out and very unstable right now, right? I can't quite keep it against my body, so I'm just gonna go slow and be as careful as I possibly can, because I don't have that extra support on my hand right now. So I'm gonna go in, and all I'm doing is pushing out from the inside. I'm supporting with my whole entire hand on the outside. As I start to feel it dry out, I'm gonna let go really slowly. Go back in. All I'm doing is pushing out with like my 4 fingers here. My thumb is tucked and out of the way. And then with my left hand, I can kind of feel where my hand is going and how much I'm pushing out. And I'm just pushing out a little bit at a time. I don't want to do too much, because then I'll throw it off center even, or more easily, if I push out too much at a time. Same with collaring. Push out again, starting at the bottom, just working my way up. I'm gonna try and give it a nice shoulder. So on Monday when we go through our vocab, we'll talk about the shoulder of our pot. So I'm pushing out on the shoulder. And then if I wanted to like shape the bottom and maybe make the bottom a dramatic line, I could take my rib and push against the bottom to give it a nice angle. And then we're getting a little risky here because it's getting a little bit wobbly, but we'll collar in a little bit more at the neck. Oops, 6 points. And then to get rid of that wobble at the top, I'll cut the neck or the lip one more time. I know I just made that look really easy. It'll probably take some practice. Then once I feel done, and you always have to pick a point to be done, because the more you mess with it, the more it can be thrown off center. You already saw mine started to wobble towards the end. And the more waterlogged it becomes, and you can get a flopped pot where it just like collapses on you. I'm deciding that I'm done. I'm gonna take my sponge, squeeze out all the water, and I need to get some of this water that's down here at the bottom out of my pot. If I leave that water down there, what's gonna happen is it's going to make the bottom of my pot crack. So I've got a little pool down here. Just kind of fishing that out. One more time. Try not to drop your sponge in your pot. It can be hard to retrieve. Just like that. Then I'm going to save this. So once you get a piece that you want to save and you like the way it looks, you are going to cut it off. Not in half, but off. You can clean up your bat a little bit. Just makes less work when you have to clean it after your pot dried a little bit. And then I'm going to take it off, just like that. Leave my pot on. One thing I forgot to talk about is trimming the bottom, so I'll do that on the next one because I kind of did it with my rib when I made it shape to the bottom. But I'm going to come over here, and I should have a pile of garbage bags. I'm going to take one of these garbage bags, open it up, put it over my vase very carefully. Make sure that it's wrapped around the bottom, and then I'm going to push out some of the air at the top, just like that, making sure it's wrapped around the base. And then this is where we store all of our pots. And we only store them here for a day. So we have all of these shelves. I'll have my crocheters move that stuff. And then the shelf across the bottom, whatever doesn't have a box. Okay? Then the next day, when you come back, you take your pot off of the bat and put it in your locker, wrap it up. You might have to rewire, put it again. But then you put it in your locker so that I know none of you are thieves, but just so people don't steal your pots. Never know what someone will do under pressure when something's due the next day and they need a pot to turn in. All right, so that was our concave form. At first I made a form that was really concave, right? And then I pushed out the side, made a dramatic neck. So it's still considered, even though it's pushed out, it's still considered a concave form. Next, I'm going to be doing a convex form. What? Yes, absolutely. Is that better? Okay. I also learned a trick that I want to share. When it comes to centering, how many of you, when you center, you get like that sandy, gritty feeling on your clay and then it hurts your hands? Yeah. So I found a trick that's supposed to help that. So I'm going to turn, hit it, and then when I was centering the first time around, I talked about making sure you're starting with a dome shape, not a flattened shape. I know we hit it at the top, but I feel like that's just giving us volcanoes. So try, instead of smacking it on the top and flattening it, go ahead and smack it from the sides. Now I'm going to seal. Add some water, dome first. Then I will cone. Doming, pushing forward. letting go slowly to add more water. Now, if you start to get that sandy feeling on your clay and it hurts, what that basically means is you've worked with your clay so long that you've wiped away that first layer of clay. So all you have to do is take your rib, and you're basically just going to be scraping off that top layer of clay all the way to the top, just like that. And then you essentially have a fresh layer of clay to work with, and that grittiness should be better. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just pushing my clay with my right hand this way, and I'm supporting this way so that it pushes it into the center. Once I've got my clay centered, karate chop. Make a spot for your fingers to go. And then I'm going to start to open, keeping my hand as steady as possible. Add some water in the middle. I feel like I'm close to the bottom. Turn it off, check. A little bit further. Notice how the top of my pot is staying the same width. And then I'm going to curl my fingers in to start to open. So I'm opening the bottom of my pot, not the top, to create that nice bottom. And then I'm going to compress. And then I'm going to be evening out the sides, so I've still got a closed top. It's like that donut shape that we talk about. And then I'm going to press on the outside. Press on the outside and press from the inside to open, do my pre-pull to open the top of my pot and make a nice even cylinder for me to start pulling up. Now that I'm ready to pull, I am going to start with my finger on the outside, make a little dent at the bottom, add some water. My inside hand is following. If you slip, just add some more water. Start back under your ledge. I have this ribbon of clay that wants to come off. Starting at the bottom again. I forgot to rib in between. I have this piece of clay up here that's trying to get off, but it can't. Now I'm going to compress the lip. rib the side. Pushing out from the inside to straighten it up. And then we'll do another pull. This was one of my bigger spheres that I made today, so if you want to start with less, please do. I think I can get one more pull out of it, so. We ribbed, add a little bit more water. Now I need to lift my arm to get in there, so I'm gonna try and keep it close to my body. And my lip's a little bit wobbly, so we'll just go ahead and make a cut. And make the lip look nice again. Okay, now we're gonna do a lot of pushing out on this one, because this is gonna be our convex form. So I'm going to add some water, and starting on the inside, my elbow is up, so I'm going to make sure that I'm going slow, so it's not very supported, and I'm just going to start to push out. Remember, you can do this more than once, so a little bit at a time. And then as I start to get to the top, I do want it to have a little bit of a neck, so I'm going to stop pushing quite as hard towards the top. And slowly take my hand out. I think I'll do that one more time. Supporting from the outside with my full hand, pushing with mostly my these 3 fingers from the inside. And we'll collar in the neck just a little bit using my 6 points. Maybe we'll try and collar this one in a lot. And not to make it convex, but to make it kind of like a oval shape. So that you guys can see what that might look like. So I'm going to be collaring in. Now I could stop here, right? I have a nice convex form and a nice soft neck, but I think I'm gonna try and collar in a little bit more. And not to create a dramatic neck to turn it into a concave form, but just to continue the vase shape through the top of the pot. And then maybe I could push it out just a little bit right here. And I could even do a little mini pull, so I could start at the base of my neck where that was, and just pull the clay up a little bit. And then I've got a different kind of, well, different than I made this morning. Different kind of vase shape. That would be considered convex. Now, normally if I go in, let's try and go in a little bit farther and see if I can get my neck. There we go. So I've got a slight wobble on my neck there. So I can take this one more time. Cut that off. Add some water. Straighten that up. And then I could take my, I need to take my sponge. Oh, I didn't think about this. Shouldn't have made that so tight. This is where a sponge on a stick would come in handy, but I don't think we have one. Okay, we'll just have to open that back up and then close it back in. Yeah, absolutely. What time is it?
It's 11:05.
Perfect. So we're trying to get that water out of there. If you are thinking you want to make a neck that's pretty closed in, try to get the water out of there before you close the neck in, especially if you have larger hands. If you have little mouse hands, you'll be just fine. Okay, now we'll close this back up just a little bit. So, there is a convex form. You saw a concave form. On Monday, what we'll be doing is we're going to do something called the, did I already just explain the discovery to you guys? We talked about that a little bit at the beginning. So we're going to be making, so one more thing that I forgot. Taking your 45-degree rib, and we need to trim, so we're not going to trim these on the kick wheels like we would a bowl. We're actually just going to trim them right on the wheel. So you're going to take this at the end when you're done. And I did this with my rib on the other form, so both of them work. This one's just a little bit easier. You're going to take this and basically cut any excess clay that's at the bottom right off of there. And I basically just want to continue this curve into, try not to jab your pot, but I just want to continue this curve into the bottom of my pot. So I'm getting rid of this excess clay that was sitting at the bottom there so that I have a nice foot to my base. Then I would clean up my vat, cut it off, put a garbage bag over it, come get it the next day, put it in my locker. Questions? We'll be making 2 vases, 1 concave, 1 convex to turn in for the project. Tomorrow we'll give it a shot, see how we do. And then you'll have MEA week and the week after to start making these. Thanks, Scott.